On tax day, the Republicans in Congress decided to show their true colors. Crooks and Liars reports, quote, the House Rules Committee took up H.R. 1105, the Death Tax Repeal Act of 2015, as it's called, a tax cut costing the Treasury $269 billion over a decade that would exclusively benefit individuals with wealth of more than $5.4 million and couples with wealth of more than $10.9 million. So they say that that's a tax break for only the 5,500 wealthiest households in the country for each year, according to the Joint Committee on Taxation. And of those, the 318 wealthiest estates each year, so those worth $50 million or more, would see an average windfall of $20 million each. So, to put that in a nutshell, Paris Hilton and her ilk, those kinds of people, the trust fund babies, they're just getting untold more millions of dollars. That's the tax cut that Congress is working on, or the Republicans in Congress are working on tax day. They're not trying to do a tax cut for the middle class. They're not trying to do a tax cut for the poor. They're not trying to do a tax cut for your grandma. They're not looking out for your average American. They're going directly for the trust fund babies. And as Bill Maher pointed out the other night in a new rules segment, this is actually welfare. Because the trust fund babies, the kids of the billionaires who, reap the benefits of this cut or repeal of the estate tax, these are people who have not necessarily worked a day in their life. And they're certainly, if they are working, they're certainly not working in a way that earns this tremendous inheritance that they're getting. So why is it that, according to Republicans, if you give $1.50 a meal to a poor mother to feed her kids, that's unacceptable because it's a poor incentive? But if you pass down hundreds of millions of dollars from a billionaire to their shitty, lazy-ass kid, well, that's not welfare. That's liberty, is what that is. There are so many contradictions in right-wing ideology in general that we could spend a full 2 hours on it. Well, that's kind of what the show is anyway, so I guess we do that. But here's the best part. Quote, while the on-paper rate of taxation on estates is 40%, it only ends up applying to 1% of taxpayers thanks to a variety of exemptions. In 2013, just 4,700 estates owed taxes out of 2.6 million deaths. I want to repeat that. Just 4,700 estates owed taxes out of 2.6 million deaths. In other words, it doesn't affect you. It affects people with fucking estates, super rich people, or 1/5 of 1% of people were affected. The Center on Budget Policy Priorities estimates that only the wealthiest 0.2%, or just 2 out of every 1,000 estates, will owe the tax this year. 0.2%, 2 out of every 1,000 estates, the richest of the richest of the rich, will owe the tax this year. And the Republicans look at that and they go, we don't like it, get rid of it. See, this is what I mean. This is why I've come out here time and time again, and I talk about how it's a myth that the Republicans are the party of tax cuts, because they frame it as if they're the party that wants to cut your taxes if you're the average Joe or if you're a poor person, if you're a blue-collar worker. They talk about taxes during campaign season in that way. They say, we want to get the government out of your way. We don't want red tape blocking you from doing what you want to do. And we want to just put more money in your pocket. So vote for us. It's a very simple message. Vote for us. We want to give you more money. We don't want that money to go to the government. And a bunch of people fall for it, and they get duped into voting Republican. But then when the Republicans get power, this is who they're trying to cut taxes for. I mean, they're talking about corporate taxes. They're talking about repealing the estate tax. They're talking about cutting the capital gains tax. They're talking about cutting the marginal tax rate for the richest people. They're never talking about cutting your taxes. Now, they actually do talk about it, but they don't do it. That's the point. There is no policy implementation of that idea and that philosophy for your average person. But you know who actually does do it for your average person? The Democrats. Yes, I have, many, many problems with the Democrats, But on the issue of taxes for the middle class and the poor, I don't have an issue with them. Why? Because consistently they've supported middle-class tax cuts and tax cuts for the poor. I've never met a middle-class tax cut or a tax cut for the poor that I didn't like, okay? And that's what progressives are usually in favor of, a progressive tax rate. So the poorer you are, or the more middle-class you are, the lesser you pay compared to the rich. So the Democrats have repeatedly proposed bills that do cut taxes for the middle class and the poor. President Obama proposed over a dozen small business tax cuts in his first term alone. Never mind the Social Security tax cut that he did as part of his stimulus package. Never mind the fact that he made 90% of the Bush tax cuts permanent, and the portions that he made permanent were the portions that applied more to your middle class earners. And that's something Bush himself couldn't get done. So the Democrats have time and time again stood up for tax cuts for the middle class and the poor. They've been fantastic on that issue. But there's still the perception in the minds of the American people. It's, well, the Democrats are the party of tax hikes. The Republicans are the party of tax cuts. So I'll vote Republican because they're looking out for me because they want me to keep more money. Wrong. Again, they want to cut Mitt Romney's taxes. They want to cut the taxes for hedge funds. They want to cut the top marginal tax rate. They want to cut corporate taxes. They want to repeal the estate tax. They don't want to cut your taxes. They don't want to do the earned income tax credit, for example, another great program, which essentially is, it's in effect a tax cut for the middle class. Well, the Republicans, time and time again, have waffled on that. That one, they're not sure. They're not sure about that tax cut. In fact, they just frame that as if it's a subsidy. They're like, oh, we don't like that one. Get rid of that. But in the next breath, they're asking for a repeal of the estate tax, which is a tax on the richest of the richest of the rich when they die, the money that they're going to hand down to their kids. And again, even if you say, hey, look, the family made the money, it should stay in the family. Great, I agree with you to a certain extent, and that's what the estate tax does. It's not like if a kid's going to inherit $200 million, they walk in and say, here, you can only have $17 and a Pop-Tart. No, they say, oh, well, we'll take 40%, and then there's all the fucking loopholes and deductions with that, and then, net, we end up taking whatever it is, 20%, 30%, your punk-ass, snot-nosed, bitch-ass kid still walks away with over $100 million. Oh, I feel so bad for that person. They didn't work a day in their life, but they got $100 million, and we're supposed to say, give them more money? Well, according to the Republican Party, yes, that is what they want to do. Why? Because they are 100% the sellout party in America. Don't get me wrong, the Democrats sell out too, and we've covered that in detail, and we talk about it every day. So the Democrats are pretty bad on this as well. But in terms of just flat out, waving the pirate flag and saying, fuck you, we're against you, we're for the rich, that's the Republicans. They've totally sold out. They're just puppets of corporate America and puppets of the rich. And when they do stuff like this, it's beyond obvious.